My name is Molly and I have type 1 diabetes. Type 1 is an autoimmune condition and it has no cure. It affects all aspects of my life, from tracking everything I eat to how much I sleep at night. I'm worried about the damages it is doing to my mental health. On the 11th of October 2012, my parents took me to the hospital. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It was one of those things where I was diagnosed and I thought, okay, I've got to inject, I've got to do this. But when you really understand the full extent of it, and when my parents really understood the full extent of it, I think it's a massive shock to the system. Diabetes is my life 24 hours a day, with constant tests and injections. Type 1 takes a massive toll on my mental health and I just can't escape it. I never speak about how my diabetes makes me feel. I only have one appointment each year and my mental health is never addressed. Sometimes I try to mention that I'm struggling, but it's always overlooked.
And how does that make you feel?
Sad. I think the only answer that you can ever say to anyone who's got an autoimmune condition is that it makes you upset, because you are just different to you are different to everyone else. And that's not going away. According to Diabetes UK, 3 in 5 people experience emotional or mental health problems due to their diabetes. I know there is a community online for type 1s, but I've never felt ready to join it. Conversations around diabetes and mental health are visible, but they don't go any further. I want to reach out and find the people who are struggling exactly like me.
Okay, so I've written, over the next few months we are creating a documentary about the relationship between type 1 diabetes and mental health. As a type 1 diabetic, I feel like there isn't enough support in this area and would like to reach out to people who feel the same. Please get in contact if you've had any mental health struggles yourself and would be willing to talk. Molly.
Within a few days, I started to get responses. I knew that mental health and diabetes was a big issue, but from the messages I've received, I can see that it is a lot more serious than I originally thought.
Type 1 has made me anxious and paranoid. These thoughts are always at the front of my mind and it's hard to get out of my own head. I feel very depressed and it's a really difficult thing to face alone.
I felt like my identity was taken away from me because I just didn't feel like me anymore. I felt like I was just surviving and wasn't living.
One of the people who contacted me through Instagram was Poppy. For Poppy, she struggles with looking to the future and how her diabetes can impact her health further. Poppy's mum has type 1, which is a constant reminder of what the future might hold for her. As you get older, complications of diabetes can start to creep in. These include kidney failure, strokes, blindness, nerve damage, heart failure. Diabetes can be fatal.
Now I've obviously growing up and being an adult, seeing my mum, she's going through some things at the moment with like her eyes and stuff. It is a little bit of a wake up. It's like, oh, okay. When's the complication going to happen? What's the first one going to be? It's like, I feel like it's a ticking bomb.
Yeah.
When's that first complication going to happen? I think that's what plays on my mind constantly.
One of the things that type 1s must live with is the fear of your levels going low. This is called hypoglycemia. A hypo is where your blood sugar levels run dangerously low, making you disorientated, see double vision and have an unsteady heartbeat. Hypos can make you deteriorate quickly.
All day for my whole shift, and now my level's 4.8, so I feel a bit ill, and I can see like 2 people in front of me all the time, like double vision, so just trying to rush up to my room as quickly as possible, so I don't collapse.
This fear has its own name, hypoanxiety. Having so many hypos and bad levels is exhausting. I lose motivation to try and make myself feel better. Diabetes is relentless and never ending. I am responsible for keeping myself alive in a way that most people will never understand. It is no wonder that there are so many people struggling with their mental health.
My level's gone high, so I need to do an injection. But I'm not really sure how many units to do. But obviously, if I make the wrong decision, then it'll determine how I feel for the rest of the day. It's still just so crazy to me that like the smallest, like 1 unit of insulin, which is like the tiniest drop, can be fatal. And that's my decision.
All type 1s have disordered eating to some extent, as it is not normal to track and count all the food that we put inside of our bodies. At least a third of young adults with type 1 admit or reduce insulin to lose weight. I wanted to reach out to Nay and discuss how her diabetes diagnosis impacted her relationship with food.
Through my late 20s, I think what I struggled with was orthorexia, which also isn't a proper term for an eating disorder, but it's when you become obsessed about healthy eating. I was too scared to take insulin by myself, and if I was giving injections to myself, I would figure out ways to omit it. But yeah, in the end, I did need help from an eating disorder team to start taking my insulin again and start counting carbohydrates.
Talking to Nay reminded me of my own struggles with food throughout high school. To eat anything, there are several steps I need to take: testing, injecting, working out the carbs of my food, then testing again to see if I've done the right amount of insulin. It became exhausting, so it was just easier not to eat. It is no surprise that 60% of women with type 1 will have experienced an eating disorder by the age of 25. It is clear from everyone that I have spoken to that type 1 diabetes and mental health issues just aren't being talked about enough. It's time that I spoke to an expert. Partha Kar is the National Lead for Diabetes and has a large presence online.
Hello everybody, and especially to the type 1 diabetes community.
Surely, he is reading people's mental health struggles firsthand. I went to go and meet Partha to talk about the work that he is doing within the NHS.
One of the fundamental problems of the NHS is that we somehow separate physical and mental health, which makes no sense because the person is one in total.
Partha has tried in the past to highlight mental health with his project Mind Over Matter. And then do you mind kind of talking about how you struggled to kind of get that off the ground and why that happened in that way?
So I think it's a very interesting space, the world of mental health in the NHS. And what I say to professionals is that everybody needs to learn how to work together rather than sort of thinking it's just me who can solve everything. And I've seen that amongst clinicians, whether it's a psychologist, psychiatrist, everybody seems to have this debate as to who can do the job. And you're going like, well, you're all needed, we just don't have enough of you.
Partha has invited us to an event talking about diabetes, where type 1s can meet up in person. Normally, I would never go to events like these as it forces me to talk about my diabetes. After 10 years of living with type 1, I'm finally starting to accept it as part of my life.
So we're at TAD, which is an event for people with type 1 diabetes, and it's basically a big networking event, and there's lots of people chatting about everything diabetes.
One of the people who inspired me was Jasmine. Having looked through Jasmine's Instagram, she clearly thrives with her diagnosis, travelling with what she likes to call her lazy pancreas. I wanted to see if Jasmine could help me change my perspective and look at my diabetes in a positive light. I called Jasmine just before she travelled to Australia.
Because when I think about accepting like diabetes, I think about it as just kind of like tolerating it, and you kind of just, you acknowledge that it's there and you try to like live your life with it by acknowledging and tolerating it. But when I think about embracing it, it's more so like rather than just like trying to turn your back on it or ignore it while trying to live your life, you like face it and you like welcome it into you. So much power in seeing that we still have a choice and we still have like autonomy in how we manage our diabetes and how we see it. And of course, like everything is context relative, and it's difficult to do that if you don't have a supportive team or if you don't have a supportive like network around you. Diabetes is with me forever at this point. You know, who knows if a cure will come around, but at this point, diabetes is with me forever. And I don't want to spend a lifetime resisting it or hating it or like feeling burdened by it, because at the end of the day, that's just going to hurt me.
The diabetic community have reinforced that there needs to be a change. I have listened to a lot of stories, and it is clear every type 1 needs access to mental health support from diagnosis, but until there is support from professionals, we need to help and support each other. I want to support the next generation of type 1s, using my voice to show that there will always be someone to talk to from the community. I can see myself in Isabel, as I was also diagnosed at 11 years old.
We find blood everywhere as well. I've got blood on these trousers.
Yeah. She flicked one of the test strips at me that hadn't quite dried yet.
Sometimes you squeeze your finger. I've done it before. I squeeze my finger before and it just shoots out everywhere. Diabetes will be part of my life forever, but it doesn't define who I am. I can live life to the full, achieving amazing things. I'm proud of how much I've grown on this journey, not just accepting but embracing my diabetes. I will never be defined by my highs or lows.